All right. Excuse me. In this last module, we're going to talk about science fairs. So, science fairs are a great way to incorporate inquiry and um, develop scientific understandings with students. This site here, Science Buddies, is a great resource for conducting science fairs or even STEM fairs. Um, the difference between a science fair and a STEM fair, science fairs, the typical science fair, like the old school science fair, is pretty rigid in that it has a set, um, there's a set process for working through a science fair project, and they'll highlight that on this website here. Um, the science, like a typical science fair project, is pretty well focused on the scientific method, which is what I wanted to point out. That there's the typical scientific method that you would use within a science fair project. You ask questions, you do background research, you talk about constructing a hypothesis, so making an educated guess about what you think is going to end up happening. You conduct the experiment, all right. You list it, step by step, so that if somebody else was to carry out the same process, they would be able to do so. Kind of similar to how you're writing your lesson plans. um, and then you would analyze the data, draw conclusions, see if it aligns with your hypothesis, and then you end up communicating the results in the end. So that's pretty typical for the scientific method, and that's pretty typical for what you would need to address. Those would be the components that you would need to address in a science fair. But now we're starting to see more stuff that's focused on STEM. So having like a STEM fair and kind of getting away from the rigidness of the scientific method. So if we look here at an engineering project guideline and look at the engineer design process, we'll notice that it's a little bit different. So it's still defining the problem and still carrying out background research, but then we start to see a little difference here in that we are specifying requirements. We start to brainstorm solutions. This is really like problem solving, choosing the best solution, do some development work, coming up with a prototype, testing it, and redesigning it. So you can kind of see how that is a little bit different of a flow in comparison to the scientific method. Either way, both are great though for engaging students and getting them motivated about science, recognizing that science is all around us. Um, I've seen it done in the younger grades as well as in the middle schools. If you are, I know in like our area, so Montgomery County, there is an organization called the Montgomery County Science Teachers Association, and they are responsible for holding the Montgomery County Science Fair each year. And students in students in middle school through high school are able to participate in that, and they have very strict standards that you're supposed to meet, guidelines that you have to follow in order to participate in it. So that's kind of why, if you're going to participate in actual competition that's like regional or state level, then you would want to definitely check out the guidelines for that and follow it. But other than that, though, doing science projects in your classroom, whether it's focused on the scientific method or focused on developing STEM, is again a really great way for engaging students in the process here. So Science Buddies is a nice resource. They have all sorts of science project ideas on here as well, that kids can kind of work through and get ideas on. You can browse projects by topics. You can browse them by grade level. Choose one that you want to do as a class, or kids can pick their own. And they have a bunch of other tabs up here that you can also look into. There's a lot of resources for teachers with doing project-based learning. So you can also use this website for that kind of stuff too. All right. So when you have a chance, just maybe check out some of those things. Again, it's just a great resource. Science fairs are a lot of fun, especially it's a nice way to bring in the community as well, because you can ask for volunteers to become experts, come be judges. You can have parents come in and check out the work that students are doing. You can tick and tie it into different career fields, kind of have an eye on that as well. So it's all fun stuff.